Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. We are back to a regular scheduled show. I hope everybody enjoyed my toe-tapping special musical spectacular episode that released Monday. If you haven't listened to that yet, make sure you tune in. Now, not only is this episode officially wrapping up the 2023 movie year with my top 10 best films of the year, but we are also wrapping up season 2 of The Movie Wire with this 2-part season finale. 2023 was an interesting ride at the movies. I wish I could say that this year blew me away, but sadly this was a ho-hum year, with the biggest memorable thing at the box office for audiences was Barbenheimer, which was a great thing. Don't get me wrong, it was a great thing seeing people flooding back into theaters. Now, whether or not Barbie or an Oppenheimer made it to my top 10 list, you will just have to listen and find out. This is a list that required another view to each and every movie. I take pride in my top 10, and it's never something I just throw on a piece of paper after just one viewing. Now, some may agree with this list, some may disagree, but as I have said on the show before, the great thing about movies is that it is truly the last great debate. To me, these are the top 10 films that did stick with me for the last year. I have seen numerous top 10 lists on social media over the last month. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with, some have some of my picks, and most of the ones I saw didn't even have some of my movies I put on the list. Some of my picks may surprise you. But without further ado, here's a Movie Wire's Top 10 Movies of 2023, starting with number 10.
Out of the windows to watch, a roar and a burst of flame.
The Movie Wire podcast.
We just need people like me.
The podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
An enterprising game developer risks everything in a race to outmaneuver duplicitous insiders to negotiate a deal with the Soviet Union bureaucrats for the international licensing rights to what would be eventually become one of the most recognizable and widely played games in history in the Apple TV Plus original, Tetris.
It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I played for 5 minutes. I still see falling blocks in my dreams. It's poetry, art, and math all working in magical synchronicity. It's the perfect game. Tetris?
Tetris.
Tetris. Tetris.
Tetris. I don't get it.
It's a combination of tetra, Greek for 4, and tennis.
Tennis.
The Russian inventor, he likes tennis.
This game isn't just addictive, it stays with you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Hank, only 10 other people in the world have seen what you're about to see. It's called the Game Boy.
Package it with Tetris.
Can you get us the rights?
The Soviet Union had worldwide rights. Nothing gets out easily.
I'm gonna go to Moscow.
You sure you don't have to talk to your wife about this first?
Pioneers have to bet the house to win.
But not literally.
Listen, have you ever heard our apartment this quiet before?
This is the inventor of Tetris.
Your game is brilliant. I'm gonna make you a millionaire.
Mr. Hodges, have you ever negotiated with the Soviets?
We're here for Tetris.
We все здесь только ради денег.
What do you say? I don't speak Russian.
The most powerful man in Communist Party is watching you and your family.
Do you know where your husband is?
What the hell is going on?
The world is changing, and Soviet Union will not be left behind.
You want to play with the big boys? This is how the world works.
We can't protect you.
Sometimes you gotta forget the rules.
This is criminal. The Soviet Union is about to implode. They're lying. Everybody's lying.
Go home! The cavalry is coming.
We don't have time. I have a plan. Oh, come on. You guys are the kings of cliffhangers.
Now, of course, Tetris is the classic tile-matching puzzle game, has been a beloved pastime for decades. In the new film Tetris, directed by John S. Bard and starring Taron Egerton, is a completely unexpected triumph that manages to take the true story of a conceptual, simplistic game and turn it into an enthralling, engaging, and at times hard-to-believe story. But one thing is for sure is that you won't see a more entertaining and well-written true story so far in 2023 as we see in Tetris. The film tells the incredibly wild, surprising, insane, and it will guarantee you will never look at the game Tetris in the same way again. This is an absolutely insane story of a production and distribution of one of the most popular games of the 80s. But the things that happened prior to the release of Tetris is not as simple as the concept of the game itself, nor as fun as what happened behind the scenes. Where we have businessman Hank Rogers, played by Egerton, who puts everything on the line from his house, family, and life. Then we have the inventor of Tetris, Alexei, played by Nikita Efremov, who risks everything to team up with Rogers, and he faces the consequence from his government to bring Tetris to the masses. One of the most impressive things about Tetris is how it manages to balance so many different elements without ever feeling cluttered, bloated, or overly paced. The film tackles espionage, betrayal, emotion, politics, and even some light humor. It weaves all this together seamlessly. The film also manages to delve into some deeper themes such as tension between individual creativity and government control, without ever feeling heavy-handed or opinionated. It stays completely neutral through the entire runtime. Tetris manages to capture and navigate the addictive nature of the game by utilizing the performances and descriptions, and not having the audience sit through a synopsis of the actual product itself. These are filmmakers that know their audience. Bard and his team do an incredible job with keeping with the subtle fun tone, but at the same time adds a sense of stress, just like the feeling of playing the actual game. It taps into the audience's nostalgic state and uses this to its emotional advantage to demand the attention from the viewer. The amazing skill that the filmmakers use isn't by focusing on the product itself. It doesn't do this by relying on just the game or game consoles, but including the setting and time period with a musical score that is completely on point. The brilliant score, along with the placement of the 8-bit graphics that director John Bard inserts into the movie, creates and adds more to the experience or journey, if you will. Bard inserts a lot of 8-bit cutscenes to introduce different key moments. And it is a nice touch and helps add to the nostalgic feeling and a respectful nod to the game systems of the 80s. It's a very soft but nice touch by the filmmakers that I really did enjoy. This includes a fun, but I have to say unnecessary inclusion of the 8-bit graphics during a scene during the climax. Even though unnecessary, with it teamed up with the musical score, you can't help but have some fun with it. The performances in Tetris are uniformly excellent. Egerton is a standout as Hank Rogers, and the supporting cast is absolutely fantastic. More specifically, Toby Jones as Robert Stein. Now, each of the characters do have a layer of depth, and this is what's really missed based on true stories that don't involve celebrities. They usually give a generic version of this character without deep diving into what makes them tick. And they never really give us a looking glass, but rather a generic interpretation of that character. But here, every character adds a layer upon layer, not only in complexity, but each character tends to layer over each other in terms of driving the story to almost a chaotic feel, but a good chaotic feel. Tetris was written by newcomer Noah Pink, whose only real writing credit comes from 2017's well-written but poorly executed thriller, The Show. Pink has an intensity to his writing that shines, and it's the words that just linger in your head well after the movie is over. It was true with his movie The Show, and it is true with Tetris. We take a lot of screenwriters out there that write their screenplays with the intent to try and make every single line as they want it to go down in film history as memorable. And some can portray Noah Pink as this kind of writer, but I would disagree that there is a difference between passion in writing versus having a writer have a vision around a handful of what they think would be memorable lines and have to fill in the blanks in the story to try to get these lines delivered. Where Tetris really succeeds is to tell a story that is focused of importance of not only telling the story of the production and distribution of an individual game, but also the frightening reality of international government control over the power of creative and people's finances. The film intertwines and balances a mountain of challenges, topics, and each one of the many subplots Tetris covers never seems out of place nor irrelevant, but grows the importance to a satisfying and exciting climax. Tetris is a movie that is surprisingly fascinating, fun, and engaging, that manages to bring the classic game true story to life in a unique and unexpected way. This is true storytelling at its best, where we are engulfed by the events that unfolded and we take something away after viewing. I found myself Googling like crazy about this true story. The story of Tetris is engaging and well-paced with a satisfying conclusion that pays off the film's themes and perseverance and determination. And this is thanks to the performances and the screenplay by Noah Pink. I was taken back and pleasantly surprised by Tetris. It is a great example of how video games and true stories can inspire when it's done correctly with great storytelling with confidence, and it is sure to appeal to fans of all ages. Whether you're a diehard Tetris player or just looking for a fun and entertaining movie, Tetris is definitely worth a watch, and it is available on Apple TV Plus right now. I'm giving Tetris 3.5 stars. When teenage Priscilla meets Elvis Presley, the man who's already a rock and roll superstar becomes someone entirely unexpected in private moments. A thrilling crush, an ally in loneliness, a vulnerable best friend in Priscilla.
Hi. What's your name?
Priscilla Boyer.
You like Elvis Presley?
Of course. Who doesn't?
What are the kids listening to these days?
Bobby Darin, Fabian, and you.
Just what is the intent here, Mr. Presley? You got women throwing themselves at you. Why my daughter?
Well, sir, I happen to be very fond of your daughter. She's much more mature than her age.
21!
That's 22. That's 22. You don't have to worry about her. Black hair and more eye makeup.
I don't know if I like it.
What do you mean you don't know if you like it?
He's not like you imagine. You know, there's a lot of rumors about you.
Was there something you're hiding?
I don't have a goddamn thing to hide. I need a woman who understands that things like this might happen. Are you gonna be here or not?
I want a life of my own.
Now, Priscilla might not be in your face, bright and shiny as Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, and thank God for that. It might not make Elvis the main focal point, and it doesn't tell us the same Elvis story that we all have known. Priscilla was actually inspired by the 1985 book Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley, and it tells a story through Priscilla's eyes from when they first met in 1959 when Priscilla was 14 and Elvis was 24. The story of Priscilla follows these two from their first meeting all the way to their separation. You know, I was actually taken back a little bit by Priscilla, and I was pleasantly surprised. There's a level of respect I have for how brave this movie is. And when I say brave, it takes everything we expect from the rise and fall story of a famous figure that we see time over time, from their own destruction of the temptation of power, overconfidence, and money. It turns the tables and it focuses on the loved ones surrounding Elvis Presley and the impact that his behavior had on those individuals. We have had numerous documentaries, TV films, full-length motion pictures, to even Baz Luhrmann's vision that took the angle of the Colonel to justify the immense pressure put on Elvis to perform, to portray the reason of why Elvis grew to the fate that led to his death. Priscilla takes on the opposite angle that we've seen from films past, we don't have a huge focus on Elvis per se. We have a focus on his inner circle, his life outside of the spotlight, his intimate settings. And this is what makes this film truly brave. It takes everything that we know and it teaches us something new, something that we may not even wanted to know, but we are intrigued by what's happening on screen. But what makes Priscilla truly brave is the amount of ugly themes and topics it tries to portray, but in a subtle way. From the impact of fame, power, overconfidence, to even an attempt at dominance over loved ones using their power as reasoning to subdue the love they're willing to provide, and leaning on the mental state of worry as a threat to losing the life the other one was raised in based on the lifestyle the other provided. Priscilla is the most subtle piece of emotion of the year, not because it makes us cry by the end of the film, because it doesn't try to. It doesn't fill the film with added emotional dialogue to gain an emotional reaction. It doesn't care about that. It just simply wants to show a point of view opposite of that of our famed icon, and actually becomes more of a curious character study than just a telling of a story. As a matter of fact, Priscilla played brilliantly by Kaylee Spaney, who holds a poker face almost the entire movie. And we have to remember that Priscilla, given her age at the time she met Elvis, was almost introduced to an extent raised by her king of rock and roll. She didn't have a normal life of a teenager. She wasn't allowed to have the same emotions as a teenager. The film makes you follow Priscilla as she goes through the emotions, but we have to interpret the emotions a lot of the time. The brave thing that our writers Sofia Coppola and Sandra Harmon do to adapt Priscilla's story is ensure the screenplay as well as the performances allow the viewer to show some empathy during Priscilla's time with Elvis, without having to force feed us elevated dialogue. This strategy doesn't force us to shed a tear, we don't have an overblown emotional reaction, and it doesn't try to attempt to get one from the viewer. It merely shows the numbness of how one grows to accept a complacent relationship, and how one just accepts their own fate of what they're told from the one they love, especially at such a young age. It's the power of dominance in a complicated and almost an abusive relationship. Now, our Elvis, played by Jacob Elordi, gives a more subtle performance than we got from Austin Butler and Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, mainly due to the fact that the movie steers away from showing us showbiz Elvis, but rather what happens after showbiz Elvis. Most of the screen time with Elvis is at his home in Graceland, where he's interacting with his family and Priscilla. It's a more intimate performance, and it works perfectly for more of an intimate setting of Priscilla and Elvis's home life and relationship. Both Elordi and Spenny give a unique, controlled, and memorable performance here. These performances stuck with me well after the movie was over. They don't shout at the camera with emotion, they don't sob, they don't give any long speeches, but yet their performances just stay with you. It's almost hypnotic how these performances roll on screen. Now, at times I feel the adapted screenplay could have gone more into depth with the conversations between Priscilla and Elvis to give more of a comprehensible understanding of the state of their relationship. But instead, the movie sticks to its subtle hints of what's going on, and I can respect Sofia Coppola for not changing the course to keep that intimate tone of uncertainty within our couple. Coppola really does flex her director's muscles and had a clear vision of how she wanted this movie to play out from start to finish, without steering off course. I can even tell she had a clear vision of how she wanted the technical aspects to really support these characters, even down, for example, the musical composition. Here we don't have a lot of Elvis's music, we get a snippet from here to there, but it's mere seconds long. Instead, we get this mesmerizing lo-fi, almost a hum integration in its place, where it not only contradicts Elvis's music, but matches Priscilla's tone to represent her mental state. The music by Phoenix and Sons of Raphael fit and complement our characters to a T, and it just all blends together to help support our characters' actions, body language, and really utilizes the music, the art of language in times of silence. Now, the film does have some minor flaws, and these noticeable flaws I have with Priscilla is the mere fact it does fall into a rush climax where it feels the need to rush through some key elements that could have put a bow on our progression of Priscilla at an hour and 50 minutes. It really did need another 20 minutes or so to really tie this movie together. I remember looking at my watch around an hour and 40 minutes, and I was wondering how they were going to wrap this thing up in the next 10 minutes. And I was disappointed that we got into a rushed climax. Priscilla is Sofia Coppola's most risky, bold, and bravest movie to date. And if anybody could have pulled this movie off, it would have been Coppola. She would have come at top of mind. Priscilla flows with a mesmerizing pace and a hypnotic tone. Those that do buy a ticket to Priscilla or view it at home and are expecting to see another Elvis biopic with toe-tapping music, this movie will disappoint you. This movie's not that. It takes the Elvis fun factor and flips it to a true focus on the surrounding characters in Elvis's life. Is Priscilla an entertaining toe-tapping and feel-good picture? Absolutely not. Will I see it again? Probably not, but that's not because it's bad, but because the character stayed with me well after the movie was done. It was a good first-time view, and I don't want to go back to revisit it because the characters are perfect. Priscilla is a contradiction of itself as one of the most subtle but memorable movies of the year. I'm giving Priscilla 3.5 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, if you haven't tuned in, follow or subscribe to the Cult-Worthy and the Movie Wire's new show, Back to the Balcony, now is your time. Because this week, me and Antonio travel to the Mist to uncover the 80s film Gorillas in the Mist and Siskel and Ebert's reviews that followed. That episode is now live. The link will be in the description of this episode. Let's hear a sneak peek now.
When the show was the most entertaining is when they actually had good, solid, heated debates, that it wasn't about hit words and hit piece catchphrases, where they actually took the time to debate whether or not the film deserved a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
If Siskel really brought that emotion to the table of what, other than the technical aspects, how did it make him feel? What aspect did he feel it was lacking? Because at the end of the day, I think this did a fantastic job on getting a reaction, even though I think we both agree it could go further. But I think for what it is, given the runtime and how much it has to balance, I think it does give an unclean feeling walking out of it. And that's one that would be an easy thing for a critic to really focus on in a review, is to give that actual icky feeling of how the movie made you feel. If you're walking out of this movie feeling good, there's something wrong with you. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure to check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
Expose the corruption, protect the hive in Beekeeper. It was loud, it was mindless, but it was, you know what? Still entertaining, receiving 2.5 stars. Everything in this world started with a dream in Wonka, which will bring a smile to the entire family's face, receiving 3 stars. The tide is turning, and it may be Aquaman's last stand in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I hope it's the last stand, because I almost had to stand to walk out, giving the Lost Kingdom 1.5 stars. Be careful what you wish for in Disney's Wish, and it did grant my wish for some old school Disney feels with music, animation, and storytelling that's fun for the whole family, receiving 3 stars. Fly into the new adventure in Illumination's new animated feature, Migration, which I should have saved my wish to wish this movie away, receiving 1.5 stars. The story of the man behind the car that nobody can afford in Ferrari, or a movie about fast cars, was incredibly boring, receiving 2.5 stars. And finally, Everything You Fear Is Under the Surface in Night Swim, which just sunk, receiving 1.5 stars. You can find those reviews of my previous episodes, but before you do, don't forget to follow or subscribe, and please don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Now, before we get into the last set of reviews, there is a baking podcast that I absolutely love. It combines the sugar and the spice with a combination of baking and murder, and that's the Sugar Coated Murders podcast with Karen and Ann. You can also check out their book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble called Click, Click, Click. It's an absolutely fantastic read, but for now, let's hear from Karen and Ann over the Sugar Coated Murders podcast now.
Hey, Ann Barner. Hey, Karen Beatty. We need a promo. You know, like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our Sugar Coated Murder podcast? Like how we love to bake and talk about murder?
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet.
And don't murder.
Because if you kill people,
we will talk about you.
2 unpopular queer high school students start a fight club to have sex before graduation in the new comedy Bottoms.
Could the ugly, untalented gays please report to the principal's office?
Guess that's you guys.
Tonight is our night. We're getting the cooch. I'm gonna talk to Brittany. You can say hi to Isabel.
What would I say? Hey, girl, how's your boyfriend? How's his penis?
I'm gonna expel you both for committing a crime against Jeff. Get out of the car.
You can't tell me what to do!
Get out of the freaking car!
We were just practicing for a self-defense club.
So it's like a fight club?
Yes.
Just stay in your lane until you're munching beaver at Wesleyan.
Yes, sir.
What's your plan here?
Jeff is psychotic, and they're picking on the weak and defenseless.
So, we teach a bunch of girls how to defend themselves.
They are grateful to us.
Adrenaline is flowing. Next thing you know, Isabel and Brittany are kissing us on the mouth. You can be our club advisor.
You know, my mom did say I need to pick up a hobby.
Welcome to our fucking fight club.
Let's get it popping in this motherfucker.
I want that trophy.
To have a safe space like this, it means a lot to people. I'm gonna finally reverse stalk my stalker. Yeah!
I'll be able to kill my stepdad.
Awesome.
He seems so supportive of women, especially the hot ones. Men ain't therapy.
Are you cheating on me?
No!
I literally saw you yesterday.
So nerd, I fucked your mom!
We are literally at the bottom. We have nowhere to go but up.
Your club is over.
They deserve a shot at showing everybody how fucking cool they are. Let's go fuck up some football players.
I want that trophy.
You created a fight club to get some coochie. You don't even know how to work that thing. I know y'all ain't tickling the pearl.
I just don't know if you're supposed to be talking to us like that, just like as a teacher.
Now, there was a lot to battle while watching the first 15 to 30 minutes of Bottoms. The overall cheesy vulgarity, the amateur performances that seemed to try and be a copycat to the humor of Superbad, and the B-movie performance of Seattle Seahawks' Marshawn Lynch. There was so much to roll my eyes to in the first 30 minutes, but then I started to discover something and appreciate the simplicity of it. No phones, no social media, no technology, nothing current in regards to the current technology that we see in comedies that are used as a vehicle to drive a story today. And Bottoms was almost proving a point that by assumption, first impressions, we tend to stereotype or make our minds up about a person, subject, court case, or even in this case, a movie, based on how it starts or how we feel about it right from the start. Bottoms is a film you have to view holistically until the end to really appreciate what it's trying to do. And if you do, the movie will reward the viewers for those that stuck with it until its final moments. Bottoms holds nothing back from multiple points of view of stereotypes, and it addresses it without any apology, but at the same time earns the right to not need an apology for the multiple pieces of messaging it tries to tackle. As I was getting into the midway point of the movie, it became clear what writer Rachel Sennett and writer-director Emma Seligman was trying to do, is take every teen movie we got from the late 90s to early 2000s and attack that head on as a borderline parody. And it uses this vehicle to subtly drive the messaging. Now, at times, I question the direction of Emma Seligman's intent of whether some of the content dialogue or even the character direction/motivation was actually intentional, or if it was just completely accidental. Because there are a lot of obvious holes we can see in the story, and the film tends to be all over the place with the reasoning of some of the character motivations or character progression feeling rushed solely based on the direction. But it's the direction here that walks a line between absurdity and abstract. But the one thing that stands out is how extremely confident the movie is. And I can't help but lean towards that this was intentional. Bottoms follows PJ, played by Rachel Sennett from Bodies, 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 and Josie, played by Ayo Adebayo from the more recent theater camp and the voice of April O'Neil in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. The two have been best friends all their life and fully open and out about being homosexual, and their goal this year in high school is to get laid, with each one having a crush on the most popular girls in the school. PJ wants Hazel, played by Ruby Cruz, and Josie is attracted to Isabel, played by Havana Rose, with each one having a crush on the two most popular girls in school. PJ wants Hazel, played by Ruby Cruz, and Josie is attracted to Isabel, played by Havana Rose Liu, the girlfriend of Jeff, played by Nicholas Galazine, the most popular guy in school and the school's quarterback for the football team. PJ and Josie, being outsiders in the school, can't get a fair break in the school against the popular kids, and they feel they can't score a chance at their two attractions, so they create a fight club. Now, the year and the time this movie takes place, I went through trying to guess the date to justify a parody of the teen films from the past. We have a specific character whip out a Razr flip phone from the early 2000s while going through the phone book. We don't have any smartphones, but we do have a soundtrack that is perfect for this movie, that focuses on music from the 90s to 2000s, with a lack of current technology. All the evidence points to the late 90s to early 2000s. Now, whether that's a written mistake or the mere fact it's a mix of satire and parody, I will leave that up to the viewer. Now, the lack of actual teachers and adults are limited to really 3 main interactions, with one adult encouraging the Fight Club and another sleeping with the high school students, and nobody is suspicious surrounding the black eyes, bruises, blood that all appear on our girls. It can borderline ridiculous, but there is a rhyme and reason why they're inserted. Director Seligman's eyes are on the prize of the messaging, and we can feel her rush to put in as much as she can in a respectable 90-minute comedy runtime. And whether she lands the messaging without sacrificing quality will be left up to the viewer. But to me, the messaging, even though the most important point of the movie, also acts as Seligman's worst enemy. As we see in the first half of the film, the story takes a while to warm up and really connect to the audience. And by the time we run into the second half, we get a lot of chaotic direction and pacing. But I can't say this doesn't work with it trying to be a comedy, but there are moments that I wanted to hold up a stop sign during some of the scenes because I wanted more exploration. Now, trying to manage messaging, being funny, and themes in a comedy, I can get why the filmmakers went in a lot of the directions they did. And a lot of the times it's well balanced and the messaging and the comedy is perfectly executed. And to the other point, sometimes the messaging just doesn't land. But to its credit, whether you like the messaging in your comedy or you just want to be entertained and have a funny movie, Bottoms is never truly boring, nor is it never not engaging. Even at its cringy opening, Bottoms somehow piques the curiosity of the viewer to see what it's going to do, and it crescendos into some extremely entertaining fight scenes and interactions between our cast with fantastic chemistry. All the members of the Fight Club, even though Rush finds a way to make all these characters extremely likable, even though we get very little depth and background behind them. This is smart pacing and writing from Seligman and Sennett to give just enough and say the right things to really have the viewer care about these characters. It completes the recipe to a story that just works in unison. Now, with all the jokes don't necessarily land when it comes to just having PJ and Josie on the screen, even though their chemistry does work here. But when we get the ensemble of characters on screen, you can tell that the cast is having a tremendous time and a lot of fun with the material because I was having fun watching them. Now, when it comes to the story, the formula is the same that we have seen multiple times, but the vehicle to get the story told is different. We have our predictable moments, we have our stereotypical situations and characters, but I didn't care that these were predictable moments or situations because this is part of the point that the movie tries to go after to prove its messaging. What I really did love about this storytelling is the fact that the film takes these predictable situations and right when the filmmakers think the audience is comfortable with the Fight Club meets Heathers meets Superbad concept, Seligman really embraces her chaotic directing style and utilizes this to throw a wrench into the gears to make it feel fresh. Writer-director Emma Seligman is going to be one of those directors on my list to really wait and see what she does next. And I have to say, she will definitely be close to the top of that list. There is something very unique, abstract, and she adds a level of intrigue on how she builds this bundle of messaging in a comedy. And she doesn't lose that feel of entertainment or the fun factor. Her eye for the balance of telling a story is spot on. Seligman creates something so special and so unique here that it's almost indescribable when it comes to her style. It's subtle, chaotic, entertaining, but when she wants you to see what she can do, she puts a forte on the exact scenes she wants you to really pay attention. The next couple of movies she does will really tell the tale of what kind of director she is, whether this was a one-hit wonder or if there's a rhyme and reason to what her style is. It's been a while since we've had a really good teen comedy. Some may interpret this movie as just a copycat, rush dumb comedy, or just completely unbalanced, but I see it differently. This is a movie that if you didn't get it or didn't understand what it was trying to do at first watch it again. This is the type of movie that may need multiple viewings to truly appreciate what it's trying to do. But realistically, this movie isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. But I have a feeling this is one that I will still be talking about 20 years from now. I'm giving Bottoms 3.5 stars. 7. In a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man just about to give birth to evil itself. They decide to get rid of the man, but merely succeed in spreading the chaos in When Evil Lurks.
The possession ideas give me the chance to explore the madness of the head of the people. I mean, all the time I've been thinking to make a movie of exorcism, but at the same time to explore the mind of the people and what happens if they lose the mind and do things that they never do, as kill another people or themselves. And the possession give me the chance to be more creative, to make my own rules, give me the chance to as an abstract story and make it the flesh. In all my movies, I never betrayed myself. I made what I wanted to make. And the problem is now that I have more chances to still making movies. I want to make my movies, no other movies, from other people.
Hay un embichado en el pueblo.
Estás asustando a mi familia.
¡Lo vi con mis propios ojos! ¡Estuve con él! Esto va a ser un infierno.
Tenemos que encontrar a la bestia antes de que nazcan más. Los tiempos de la fe se terminan rápido.
Now, writer-director Damien Rudna can give Exorcist Believers director David Gordon Green a few pointers on how to create a possession movie that truly knows how to possess an audience and really get underneath our skin. Our writer-director Damien Rudna, who did 2017's Terrified, takes us on a horrific journey that crawls into our head, tenses every muscle from the first 10 minutes and doesn't let go until the final moments of the film. Here is what I love about Rudna, is a mere fact in his work we can see him challenge himself and adapt to his strengths in filmmaking. It is apparent that he doesn't really care about who finds his movies offensive or shocking, and he has actually earned the right to have this level of confidence because he doesn't add anything shocking into his films just to say he adds them. He has a level of skill and he adds purpose along with supporting it with natural fear. Now, When Evil Lurks does add a level of extremeness and horrific scenes that some viewers might call tasteless, senseless, especially with his use of utilizing children in an attempt to gain some truly chilling moments. Open and honest, I for one am not a fan of utilizing children in horror movies unless it's used in a proper way to really make sense to the film. It's like what movie critic Gene Siskel used to say about utilizing children in horror or putting kids in peril. It's a cheap trick in Hollywood to gain an audience reaction. But when it comes to When Evil Lurks, there is a purpose and there is a rhyme and reason, and in this case, it really does work. And because Rudna wrote When Evil Lurks, he ensures that the material justifies the use of children, and he also does so in a symbolic way that I'll get into in just a second. Now, When Evil Lurks follows Pedro and Jimmy, played by Ezekiel Rodriguez and Damian Sullivan, who live in a secluded community owned by Ruse, played by Louis Zambrowski. Pedro and Jimmy find out that there is a possessed man living on the property of this small community, and against all requests and better judgment, they plan on moving it hours away to rid the possessed demon before it spreads to the community. But things don't go as planned as the possessed body escapes. Now, When Evil Lurks is full of brilliant writing by Runna, who knows not only how to build and progress a story along with a pace to perfection, but also adds a build of tension, suspense, and shock. But Runna is smart enough to know that by just having a possession movie about a story of evil and how it consumes everything around it, including our children, shouldn't be treated as just a film with the sole intent to scare, but rather treated as a film that gives the viewer an experience of uncomfort as we are being involved in the story of evil, and at the same time having us witness things to truly test our mental capacity of seeing the outlaying message outside of evil, just like our main characters have to do to balance their decisions in the film. Now, our characters in the movies, they make a lot of dumb decisions on the surface, but what Runna brilliantly does is that he asks the audience to hang on and he justifies the decisions our characters make. Runna demands us to take his hand as he guides us through his vision of pure evil, and we just hover in our seats like we are looking upon hell itself while floating in a mesmerizing state of purgatory. The environments are cleverly picked and shot with an eerie uncomfort that match the story perfectly, where Runna uses the environments to not give away exactly what's about to happen next, but rather uses it as a way to play with us as a viewer. We go from secluded farmland to the bright and sunny suburbs to a small creepy town. When we have these setting changes, we don't see a drastic change in our characters because they are at a constant state of the unknown. And Runna identifies and understands that his characters have little character progression, and it's justified for the story. And the tonal change compensates to still ensure that the audience is always at a state of the unknown along with our characters. And this puts a heavy weight and a heavy stake on our cinematographer to make sure these settings are spot on, to really support our characters and support our story. And I have to give credit to our cinematographer, Mariano Suarez, in which this is his best work to date. In a lot of ways, When Evil Lurks took me back to when I first saw The Exorcist, from the pacing, the uncomfort, to the theme of evil, and the fear of the unknown we feel from the characters, and the little information we get. We have to experience each action along with our main characters on screen. And this is what's so special and refreshing about this movie, is the mere fact Runna doesn't feel the need to rush, force-feed us dialogue to justify anything. There's no real jump scares, there's no loud music. It's a build of tension that at times we can see some actions coming, but in our heads we keep thinking, there's no way he would. He wouldn't. He won't. And then it's followed by a natural reaction of our eyes getting big, then closing them from shock for only a quarter of a second until we have to see what's happening on screen. This is a brilliant direction, brilliant writing, and of course, brilliant performances, especially by Ezekiel Rodriguez and Damian Sullivan. Now, of course, when you have a fantastic build of a story and a build of tension, the climax can make or break a movie like this. So the climax for Runna has to be on point. This is where I've been back and forth when it comes to the climax. What the climax proves is that we could have used a lot more character time with some of the supporting cast, and we do get into some cliche moments. But one thing for sure, if there is any debate on the quality of filmmaking, the debate would be surrounding this climax, not the film holistically. The climax is neither amazing nor is it poor. It's just kind of a way to close the movie and the story with a subtle period instead of the exclamation mark that the movie deserved to have. When Evil Lurks isn't the horror movie that jumps out and says boo really loud, but rather has multiple strategic placements to really gain an emotional response to make the viewer actually feel something. With so many generic horror movies that we have seen over the years with the same old problematic formulas that just become so repetitive, When Evil Lurks goes back to its horror roots and is truly a horror masterpiece of this generation that I hope more people will give a chance to. I can't remember when I've seen a horror film this good and effective to the point it felt like going on a roller coaster and riding that coaster to the very tippy top and it keeping us there with no way of knowing when it's going to drop. When Evil Lurks is the best horror movie of the year, and it's actually the best horror movie in the last few years. I'm giving When Evil Lurks 3.5 stars. 6. When her family moves from the city to the suburbs, 11-year-old Margaret navigates new friends, feelings, and the beginning of adolescence in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
I'm here to speak to you today about your changing bodies.
The blood is released through the vagina.
please, just do this one thing for me.
Let me just be normal and regular like everybody else. Just please, 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 please.
What I can't say.
I've decided I want you to join my secret club. If you want to be in the club, then you have to wear a bra.
Oh. You think you need one?
Are you okay? You can tell me the truth.
Fine, good. Yes, we have the Campus Improvement Committee. Any volunteers? Social Committee, Fundraising Committee. And how are you?
I read that when you don't have any loved ones around, your life expectancy drops drastically, but you know, I've had a good run.
Gets tiring. Trying so hard all the time, doesn't it?
I don't know if I want to do this, just that we're ready. Please, God, let it be a lady. Do you think any of us will look like that when we're 19?
We must increase our bust!
Based on the book published in 1970 by Judy Blume of the same name, comes this coming-of-age story about Margaret, played brilliantly by Abby Ryder-Fortson, who played Scott Lang's daughter Cassie in the first two Ant-Man films. Now, Margaret has to navigate a list of challenges and changes from moving, puberty, the yearning of belonging in adolescent years, and alongside moving away from her friends, her close relationship with her grandmother Sylvia, played by Kathy Bates, and feels like she's in the middle of a confusing choice at that age of the topic of religion. With her mom Barbara, who is Christian, played by Rachel McAdams, and her dad Herb, who is Jewish, played by Benny Safdie, Margaret has to navigate these challenges in an already confusing time of youth. Now, I have found a lot to love in Are You There, God, having a daughter around the same age as Margaret that many of you have listened and heard on the show. My very lovely and vocal daughter, Brooklyn. I found myself chuckling at some of the situation Margaret finds herself in, especially in social environments. And as parents in the same boat or you've been there, I think we all can agree that in no way can you be prepared for everything at this age. And Margaret's parents, Barbara and Herb, boy do they try. While I was in the theater, I could point out who were the obvious parents by the short bursts of laughter for a situation that a parent would laugh at, or leaning into the partner next to them with a whisper or just a simple nod of the head. This is a pure sign of how successful this material is on screen, and how well it works. And it's a solid sign that this adaptation is spot on. There is a lot of topics to tackle through the eyes of one young girl that some would find easier to just read through the words and thoughts and pages in a book. And it would be so easy for creators and filmmakers to take the original material and make it bloated or artificial to the emotional elements, along with over-dramatizing our character relationships. The original book does a fantastic job at truly exploring the emotions and telling the tale and thoughts of Margaret. Are You There, God was directed and adapted by Kelly Freeman Craig from 2016's The Edge of 17. That she also wrote and directed, and everybody should give that movie a watch as well. Craig has a definite skill for this type of movie, more specifically her genuine, honest writing. That is subtle, but so subtle it reaches to a realistic tone that the viewer can actually relate to and just truly sucks us in. But more specifically, the amount of love and heart she puts into each character to give a simple characteristic that the viewer can grab and hold onto. As for the film version of Are You There, God, it stays as honest as we read in the book, and it is one of the best film adaptations from a book that I have seen in a long, long while. It stays true to itself in its pure raw honesty, and even with all the topics it attempts to cover between religion, all the way through the critical age of young women growing up. It never loses focus or ever feel bloated with too many topics. It just glides through these topics with ease as we're looking through a looking glass into this family's life. Now, many may be turned off by this movie thinking it's not for them, but I will say that even I'm not the targeted demographic for this movie, nor can I relate to going to the store as a young lad to purchase a bra. But the movie is much more than that. It sends a unified feeling of emotion and taking the viewer back to her adolescent years. is pure realism and honesty of its characters and the amount of heart put into not only the adaptation of the book, but the heart went into the performances and subtleness to these topics. This is writing an adaptation at its best. The movie never really overemphasizes or focuses on certain situations of growing up, such as talking about insecurity of bodies, buying bras and pads, crushes, etc., but it addresses these events growing up in memorable scenes that doesn't attempt to poke fun at the reactions of our girls, but rather we feel amused as adults of how we view these emotions now as adults. This is where the film is smart and its pure magic to allow the audience go along with these situations that shows a natural behavior from Margaret and her friends, and even the adults at times. And the smart thing that Craig does in this is to ensure the pacing during these situations doesn't overstay their welcome. The pacing is mere perfection. We can feel the camera move with our characters to resemble emotion that they're outputting from fast-paced to chaotic to anger. The camera work here is on point and engaging to the characters and story. Then we start to wrap things up on the topic of religion towards the final act that the movie built to, where I felt the film could have used an additional 15 or so minutes to truly take its time in this conflict, since the film surrounds not only the title in this, but is a primary driver throughout the film, and when Margaret is faced with the final conflict of addressing this topic, it does feel a little rushed and could have used more of a summary before the conclusion. But in no way does it throw off the vibe of the rest of the movie. The movie has already won me over to really take a drastic step backwards. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is one of those films that no matter who you are, this will put a smile on your face from ear to ear for the entire runtime due to the outstanding adaptation by Kelly Freeman Craig and her outstanding respect for the source material and how to tell this story with the incredible chemistry and performances by the entire cast, especially Abby Ryder-Fortson. This is also one of those movies that I hope audiences won't turn away from thinking of how it won't appeal to them. It's a simple coming-of-age story with big conflicts but more importantly, an even bigger heart. And sadly, I fear this is one of those movies that may be overlooked come awards time or lost in the mix. But this is one of those movies that you would want to root for. I'm giving Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, 3.5 stars. 5. Just kidding. To be continued. And that's a cut on part 1 of the season finale of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. Monday, I will be back with the top 5 movies of the year, and that is an episode you do not want to miss. And don't forget to show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. One last thing. Do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.